Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Questin here with a discussion about the new Imperial campaigns. And I'm, of course, talking about Elspeth, Gelt and his campaign rework, and, of course, Emperor Karl Franz and his rework. The pros and cons of each campaign. Now, I've already discussed these campaigns, but obviously with more hours in it, you do get a different impression than the one you originally had. Certainly, your opinions after 100 hours are going to be very different after 200 or 300 hours. That's kind of where I am at right now with respect to Thrones of Decay. So, there's pros and cons with each of these campaigns. There's benefits. Each campaign does handle quite differently in many ways, even if each campaign will ultimately take place in Empire, or can take place in Empire if you're playing as Gelt. Though I would firmly recommend, if you're playing his campaign, to go back to the Empire and also keep territory in your cafe, because it's going to give you a lot of power. So let's talk about the pros and cons, starting with Emperor Karl Franz, who still is a recommended campaign. Would I say he's a recommended campaign for beginner players? I mean, you do have a good starting province, you do have a lot more power right now, you have much better mechanics, but certainly I would not necessarily argue this campaign is a good one for new players. I would recommend Gelt more. If you're a new player, I would recommend starting with Gelt. But okay, let's talk about Karl Franz, the pros and the cons. In terms of faction effects, outside of that campaign movement range and to a very limited extent the growth, it's nothing particularly special. You might think allegiance points and immunity to diplomatic penalties from Empire regions would be beneficial, but it doesn't actually matter all that much. It's a nice benefit to be sure, but not really all that special when you're looking at it. In terms of his skill line, however, Karl Franz is really the Emperor, and he's going to be focusing on benefiting the Electric Count State Trooper. So he's getting weapon strength and missile damage for those Electric Count State Troopers, and he's getting a bunch of other skills. Lord recruit rank for all units, unit experience gain, and all kinds of benefits, including having extra capacity for Electric Count State Troopers pool capacity. So with the State Troopers, which certainly are the hardest to get in a Karl Franz campaign out of the three. I would say Volkmar is harder, but I'm not counting him for the purposes of this video because he certainly needs a rework. But with the exception of Volkmar, Karl Franz does have a difficult time getting the State Troopers. That's a con. But at the same time, the fact that he can get 2 units in this pool to Electric Count State Troopers is certainly a benefit. Now, not all State Troopers are worth it. Certainly not the case, but things like Eldred Guards, Handgunners, Outriders from Marienburg, Pistoliers from Averheim, all of those, and Mortars with no friendly fire, they are all very useful. And on top of that, he doesn't just get these units through getting the Electric Counts, he gets items, and he also picks up all of the Electric Count titles, which do give some fairly solid advantages for those lords. Reducing upkeep, increasing income from ports, that kind of stuff. So it's all very, very beneficial from his campaign. Slower to get access to than most other Imperial campaigns, but really good once you do have access to them. So that's kind of how I would say, that's kind of both the pro and the con in Karl Franz's campaign. On one hand, as a con, he does start more slowly than other Imperial campaigns. He certainly takes more time to build up the power, but once you do build up the power as a pro, it is certainly there. He doesn't have the best climate situation. I mean, he has typical Imperial climate, so he gets temperate, he gets savanna, he gets desert, and he gets jungle. He doesn't have anything special, and it does hurt him to an extent that, or to a large extent, that both frozen and wasteland are not good climates, because beyond the Empire there's a lot of wasteland and there's a lot of frozen territory, especially when you're considering Norska, who is hostile to you. So climate situation, not really all that great from his perspective. Now, in terms of other things beyond the electric counts, he does have electoral machinations. The diplomatic talks, not really that important. Sure, you can manipulate the system to increase relations with certain factions, decrease them with other factions, between other factions, but the problem is the escalating costs that you're talking here makes it so more like a gimmick rather than a genuine benefit. Now, it starts off as just affecting Imperial factions, but then once you do research Conclave of Light, which is really a callback to the Immortal Empire's launch trailer, you can improve diplomatic relations or decrease diplomatic relations between Empire, High Elves, Kislev, Bretonnia, Dwarf factions, basically the Order Tide. So you can make that Order Tide happen. That's a pro, but but it's more like a gimmick, so it's kind of a pro, but not really all that special. The con with this is that it is a gimmick, and you don't have a way to get vision with these factions across the map. There's nothing in the research tree that can help you out with that in terms of that respect. So you do need to gain vision the usual way, like sending lords and heroes on missions to just get visions. Cafe and caravans do help with that, and the High Elves are not necessarily too far away, but yeah, it's not necessarily that great from that perspective. Now, in terms of a major pro in his campaign, Emperor's Decrees. These are extremely powerful. So you got recruitment benefits, XP benefits, population surplus, reducing corruption, instant recruitment for an army that's doing both local and global recruitment. Like just reducing one turn on recruitment means you can get armies faster than pretty much anyone else in the Empire, and the vast majority of other factions actually in the game. Because like even with something like Skaven and Greenskins, instant recruitment is instant recruitment. Sending an army to an ally or an empire faction to help them out, it's degrading, it's not particularly great, but you can improve this. And then getting replenishment on all those Electric Count State Troopers. So not only do you have a pool that you can fill up with 2 units as opposed to just 1, which is usual, but you can also replenish that pool every 15 turns. So long cooldown, but certainly very, very powerful over here. Like just, you can get more State Troopers than anyone else in the long term. Not the short term, however, because you do need to get the various parts of the Empire under your control to make that happen. Being able to declare war on Electrocom factions without a loss of fealty, okay, all well and good, but not that great necessarily. I mean, you don't have the ability of just declaring war. You have to use Casus Belli when you're talking about declaring war on another Electrocount faction, including Elspeth. So that is a downside, and when you use this, it's an instant declaration of war. But a real power here is Unify. So Unification gives you the ability of confederating a 10 fealty Electrocount faction. So initially, you can only use this to confederate factions, to confederate the Electrocount. So Talabayam, Elspeth, Midland, and you do get that, and you do require that 10 fealty. Now, here's a significant benefit in this. You may not hold as much territory as other factions. You certainly can do so. You may not hold as much territory, but the significant benefit in the long term with this is you can deliberately let these AI-controlled factions, which on higher difficulties have a significant economic benefit compared to you, you can let them build up these provinces. I'd probably stop at around tier 3 when they get to tier 3, and then just confederate them and have them spending all that money, and your economy gets a boost. You don't have to spend the money on the structures because the AI is doing so. So that's an enormous benefit in a campaign. Of course, not all Electrocounts are going to survive, but you can revive them. Like, for instance, Midland usually will die. But I revive them, they start rebuilding, and it's like once they get to tier 3, with all of that, they're going to be in a much better situation. So that is a huge benefit. Beyond that particular situation, you can also improve all of these decrees for research, and it's very quick research. So Conclave of Light is 1 turn because it's costing prestige. Any kind of research that costs a resource is instant, so 1 turn. So all the benefits in Enemies of State and Diplomatic Corps, 1 turn, right? But it takes 2 turns to get Emperor of the Empire. And with Emperor of the Empire, all your decree actions are upgraded, and you can then confederate every Imperial faction, including Gelt. So you could have Gelt playing his campaign over here, gaining some territory to a degree or another. Here he hasn't done particularly well, but he can gain a good amount of territory in Cathay, which is for most part good climate for you, and then you just confederate them, and it's guaranteed confederation. This is a huge benefit in his campaign because being able to guarantee a confederation of powerful factions in particular is a huge benefit in your campaign, because many times when a faction builds up to huge strength, it's actually going to be quite tricky to be able to get a regular diplomatic confederation. While you lack the regular diplomatic confederation, you can guarantee it through the Emperor's decree. So huge benefit. But my conclusion on Karl Franz would be he doesn't do necessarily as well in the early game as some other campaigns or any other campaign, minus Volkmar perhaps. But his long-term potential in terms of the campaign situation is genuinely the best. Terrain aside, which is a major downside, a major con. The biggest con in his campaign is the fact that, yes, his early game is very rough. It's more complex because you start in Reichland, so you're boarding factions to the south, like Rom, for instance. Skaven are not too far away. Athaloran can be a problem. Kamler can be an issue. And then you've got Kazrak, you've got Festus, you've got Vlad. You've got the Changeling to deal with in your campaign. So all of those are issues, early game issues. But once you get the ball rolling with Karl Franz, he has an enormous level of potential. Certainly the best economy, long term. So huge pros in the late game, major cons in the early game. And while he does have all these benefits for Electrocon State Troopers, he doesn't have quite the same army capability as the others do, including Volkmar. Like, Volkmar can get some very good troops in his campaign and some really good armies. Marcus Wolfhard can get a lot of high-end troops fairly quickly, and I don't even need to talk about Elspeth or Gelt just yet in terms of their army capability. So you have technically the weakest army of the Empire with less variety in that army, certainly the least amount of variety in terms of the troops early on. It gets a lot better once you get all the electric counts. So yeah, pros and cons. Does weak early game, does very well late game. So that's Karl Franz. Really good campaign compared to where it was before, but certainly a rough campaign. Not recommended for a beginner player. Let me make that clear. Like, there are campaigns. Like, I would firmly recommend Gelt if you're a beginner player. It's a much better situation. But let's move on to Elspeth. Talking about Dark Lady of Nuln, she has some very significant benefits and some downsides compared to Karl Franz and Gelt. But if we look at her faction effects, she gets a research benefit, which doesn't matter quite as much because there's other ways to improve that. So 10% research, not necessarily all that special, especially since you do still have students. And in point of fact, Elspeth may be able to get more students than quite a few other campaigns, because she has a bunch of research that she can do in one turn, including State Troopers. That's a major pro in her campaign, and I would consider it a faction effect. See, Elspeth and Gelt, they unlock State Troopers through State Troops research. It's one turn at 7,500, but they get multiple units of State Troopers, 2 units of State Troopers for each research. And this gives you all these wonderful units. You may not have, as a con, you may not be able to get as many State Troopers nor as many benefits as Karl Franz does get for these State Troopers, especially in terms of upkeep. But the fact that you unlock them quite early on when they are at their most powerful does benefit you quite immensely in this campaign. Combine that, of course, with artillery benefits and gunnery unit benefits, like, the Shorefires, having a steam tank fairly quickly, having mortars with no friendly fire, really, really good early game benefits. Eldred's Guards, which are actually quite difficult to unlock in Karl Franz's campaign, are easily unlocked in Elspeth's campaign. And these guys are really good because they're regular spearmen, but they have 80 armor. So like typical spearmen, which are very low armor, even the new Regiment of Renown, the Grundol's Defenders, which are really more meant to protect your artillery because of the benefits they give for them when they're in close proximity. Eldred's Guards are really good line holders, probably the best line holders of the entire Empire. Yes, better than Halberdiers, better than Greatswords. Like Silver Shield, 80 armor units, we're talking here Jade Warrior level. In fact, they're better than Jade Warriors because Jade Warriors got an armor nerf, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a major pro in terms of like faction effects, her research over here. Beyond that, the con, of course, is the cost. So you do have to pay for it. You don't just unlock it by taking, the State Trooper capital. So in the long term, you're going to pay more for this. You're going to pay a pretty penny for this. So that is a con with respect to State Troopers. But there's, of course, more. In terms of her lord effects, before going any further in terms of faction situation, she is quite very strong. She gets immunity to vampiric corruption. She gets the Darkwalker ability. She is a Lore of Death caster. But here's the thing about Elspeth. She rides a Carmine Dragon, which might just be the very best dragon in the entire game, because its breath ability is really good against dealing with single entities. Most breath attacks are good at dealing with clumps of troops. Elspeth's breath attack on the Carmine Dragon, which she unlocks reasonably quickly in her campaign, is going to make it so that she can kill single entities quite quickly because it reduces their armor and does a lot of damage as well. On top of that, she also has various gems. One of the most useful one is that she has a vigor loss reduction gem and a regeneration gem. It obviously only works for her army, but damn, that is powerful because she can get Fyodor Bruckner. Of course, everyone can get Fyodor Bruckner, but having this guy with regeneration, or actually forget that, Gotrek and Felix with regeneration in battle, holy crap. I mean, keep in mind, they already have it, but only when they're low HP, so bear that in mind with respect to them. So really powerful in combat. She herself has regeneration. That's so absurd. So, like, Tsarina Katrin wishes she was half the caster that Elspeth was. Because, like, Katrin is trying to do the same thing, like a hybrid melee caster lord, but she's pretty crap in melee. I'm Frostworm notwithstanding, but honestly, Frostworm doesn't hold a candle to the Carmine Dragon, let alone least of which the fact that, you know, the Carmine Dragon is a bloody flying thing, the Frostborn isn't, and even on her sled, Katrin doesn't hold a candle to Elspeth. Because Elspeth, with her Darkwalker ability, gets so much physical resistance that she can genuinely hold her own quite well in duels. She won't be able to kill someone like Grimgor or Vlad in a duel, but she'll be able to survive them, and then you'll let everyone else kill them. And then here's the thing, she's focusing on Lore of Death, and she'll get more casters for Lore of Death than anyone else. But at the same time, like, Lore of Death may not necessarily seem like the best magical school of magic in the world, and it's not. But it meshes really well with the gunpowder and range focus of the Empire, because, hey, you have Vlad coming towards you, no problem. Just reduce his armor by 30, do a breath attack on him, and kill him. Like, literally, your gun line turns from a really powerful ranged line into an execution squad, even against someone like Vlad. And if that fails, you still got regeneration in combat, so take that, Vlad. And seriously, you hard counter Vlad playing as Elspeth. Hell, I would dare say that if Elspeth wasn't a DLC lord, she would be the best early game best beginner campaign for Empire, because she's really powerful on magic alone and on those state troopers alone. But she has more stuff, a lot more stuff. She starts in Null. The pro here with starting in Null, while you don't have the same level of vision with other factions that Karl Franz has, so that's a limiting factor early on, your campaign is fairly straightforward. That's a major pro in a campaign. Like, just having a straightforward path, having only to deal with a couple of enemies as opposed to being surrounded by them on all sides is a major pro. And especially because Karl Franz's AI is the best AI faction of the Empire. So when you're not playing Karl Franz, he is significantly better than other Imperial factions, like, regardless, Marcus Wolfhard, Gelt, all the Electrocounts, it doesn't matter. Even Elspeth herself, even her AI falls far short compared to what Karl Franz can do. Well, mind you, Karl Franz's AI starts with an entire province of 4 regions. Maybe it's time to change that CA, because it's a bit ridiculous. The downside, the con in all of this, is that Karl Franz is really hard to confederate if you're playing as Elspeth, because it's hard to confederate pretty powerful factions, and certainly ones that are more powerful than you. And while Karl Franz may not have the same strength ranking as me in this campaign, he's still strength rank 6. I mean, you play Elspeth, you're basically protecting Karl's entire eastern flank, so his AI can focus on Festus, on Kazdrak, on Norfin. Yeah, he's got Marienburg, and a good amount of territory. Mind you, I helped him with it, and I traded it for him, some of it, but still, really good situation in terms of territorial control for him in this campaign. Which is good, because one of the issues you run into a Karl Franz campaign is, like, you don't really want to invade Norska, because it's a pain in the neck due to the terrain. But at the same time, you have to worry about invasions from Norska, from Be'lakor, etc. Whereas in an Elspeth campaign, you can just let Karl deal with all of that. You've got other issues. And in the long term, you'll be able to confederate them just far more slowly. So you won't get his skill line. Like, Karl can confederate Elspeth quite easily, right? Very easily if you want to. I would recommend not necessarily confederating Elspeth first because she's still a major faction. So it's better to leave her to do her own thing and give her territory so she holds the entire eastern flank of the Empire if you're playing Karl. But yeah, major pro, because like in a Karl campaign you might end up just constantly defending the northern part of the Empire. In an Elspeth campaign you don't have to do so, and you can worry about other things. And what is Clan Ferric of all people doing here? Different discussion. Regardless. And that's just touching the tip of the iceberg that Elspeth has in terms of pros. She does have two things. Gardens of Moor and the lab. Ikeclaw's lab. Like, it's a discount Ikeclaw's lab combined with Oxyatl's teleportation mechanic. Though working in a different way. So you get the Sanctums, effectively, or a worse version of the Sanctums with the Gardens of Moor. But here's the thing with these Gardens of Moor. Karl Franz can struggle in his campaign to get around the world, right? Whereas Elspeth, if I were to gain some money here somehow, let me try and figure out some way of gaining some money in this particular situation. But whereas, yeah, there we go, that should get me close at the very least. But whereas you can struggle to get around the world outside of, distant confederations from a mechanic, and certainly won't be able to send armies from the Empire very easily to these territories. If you play an Elspeth campaign, I'm just going to cancel some structures. I think that's the best thing I can do. If you're playing an Elspeth campaign, what you can do every couple of turns is you set up a Garden Moor in any Imperial territory. So over here, you get vision with Gelt for Caffeine Caravans. You declare war on him. Yes, declare war on Gelt if you see the Burning Nomads, or try and make a military alliance with Xiaoming, and you'll get vision with him. And then you can build a Garden of Moor. Now, a Garden of Moor, as a pro, gives you hero capacity, quite a bit of hero capacity, +2 for each of them for battle wizards. It's all battle wizards, though you can recruit only amethyst wizards from the garden. Or you get more Knights of Moor Electricon State Troopers, and reducing replenishment time for them, benefits against vampire factions, or reducing upkeep and increasing global recruitment benefits in the province, in the region that you're in. And also giving global recruitment capacity faction-wide. So she has got a lot of flexibility to move around. Yes, you will have to make your way to Volkmar to get vision with him, though that's not necessarily the worst thing you could do. And with Marcus Wolfhard, there's options. Like, really, there are genuine options that you can work with respect to a Marcus Wolfhard campaign in order to gain vision with him. I'm not quite sure. Oh, yeah. Another thing with respect to vision is that you have research that helps you with that. Because now remember, you can teleport to these gardens more. I'll talk about that in just a second. But you got research over here for Seeker of Knowledge. This does take time, so it's not instant like Karl Franz has with improving his decrees. But you can gain vision of all non-hostile Empire faction capitals. So you can teleport to Volkmar. You can gain vision of Marcus Wolfhard. And you can set up a Garden of Moor. And when you set up a Garden of Moor in the region you're teleporting, you won't have trespass penalties in that particular region. It's not quite the same as Karl Franz's faction effect. And you can only teleport with her army. So that's the downside, if you will. Like, you can only teleport with her army. It costs money. It's got the cooldown. You can reduce the cost, to be sure. But you can summon a Doomstack in a region as well. And then recruit it. Or just set up a Garden of Moor with the faction and just start recruiting stuff. But you do need to set up in-camp stance in order to recruit stuff, or you need to get upgrades over here, like choose one in order to be able to recruit units. So that is pretty powerful. That's very flexible. You do struggle in Confederation with these factions, though. That's the major con in Elspeth's campaign. Like, yeah, you gain vision with these factions. You can go help them out, but you're going to struggle to unify the Empire. That is the major con in her particular campaign. Major pro, of course, the Imperial Gunnery Skull and Amethyst Armory. So what all of this does, just to keep it simple, what all of this does is gives you the best army flat out of the entire empire, because you'll have basic units of gunnery, infantry, gunnery, cavalry, mortars, cannons, hellstorms, all that, being far better in Elspeth's campaign than in any other Imperial campaign. Maybe even all of them combined. And that's just the basic troops. Like Hellstorms with more rockets, Hellblasters with more power, Landships with more power. I do feel like the Landships should be easier to upgrade than the Steam Tanks, because Steam Tanks are a higher tier unit. But then you couple this with the Amethyst Armory, where you have Ironsides, you have Outriders with grenade launchers, you have Hellstorms, and you have Landships at tier 4. Tier 4 is pretty annoying to unlock, but because you do need to get tier 5 Nuln, which is not necessarily the fastest thing, especially when you don't have the population surplus as Karl Franz. So you're not so much. So Major Khan in her campaign, she builds her empire slower than Karl Franz. She does have a lot of power as a pro, but she is going to build up the territory she takes slower. She doesn't have the same recruitment benefits, even though with these units, with these Amethyst units, she can certainly recruit quite a lot of them very quickly. So combine Amethyst troops, if I even have an army. So you combine Amethyst troops with Regiments Renown, and you get the ability of recruiting quite a few units in an army very, very quickly for emergency situations. And you can also increase the capacity of Amethyst troops. Now, mind you, when you purchase Amethyst troops, the cost will escalate of schematics, so you gain schematics for battles. But this is not too much of an issue, because each one of these troops is like an in-game unit itself to begin with. And on top of that, like the ability of recruiting them globally. Like, yeah, you might lose some of them, so be careful about that, because the cost is going to keep escalating, though you do have the ability of reducing it, for research one time, so... sorry, not the units themselves. You have the ability of increasing her capacity of Amethyst units, but just reducing the purchase cost of army abilities with artillery. So artillery over here. Couple of charges, you can't have unlimited numbers of artillery, but still, really good. Huge level of power. Like, just to clue you in how an Elspeth campaign plays on a basic level, you start in Nuln, you go into Fildorf and Saarland, then you go through Averheim and just go beat the crap out of Vlad. And he won't stop you. He won't be able to stop you. And that is not something anyone else can really say. Because, yes, other factions can beat up Vlad early on. Draika in particular has the easiest time with it, but none can annihilate him quite as easily as Elspeth does, because her gunnery line is an execution line. So, yeah, you end up defeating Vlad, securing the Empire fairly quickly. So, if you're looking for a campaign, I would say the major pro of this campaign is the fact that you do have that huge level of power in your armies. So if you're looking for a more straightforward campaign where you have a lot of power and can easily deal with any threat you encounter, it's a huge pro. If you're looking for a campaign where you're building a massive empire, you do have the flexibility to move around the world, but you have more difficult time with Confederation, more difficult time to build up settlements, not quite the same economic benefits and empire benefits that Karl Franz does have. So pros and cons with Elspeth. I'd say for an average player, Elspeth's campaign is an amazing one. So if you're starting out as an empire, you just got back into Warhammer 3, or you just started, yeah, this is a good campaign for a lot of people. Probably one of the best campaigns, but it's not one I'd recommend for beginners, because obviously beginners are not necessarily going to jump in to purchase DLC. And I'm not sure I would want to recommend them to do so. Finally, we have Balthasar Gelt, and oh boy, Gelt is ridiculous. Let's get into that. And finally, Balthasar Gelt, the Supreme Patriarch of the Empire. It kind of makes you sad to a certain extent that settlements can't accommodate multiple factions, because really Gelt should be in Altdorf, because that's where the Supreme Colleges are. But regardless of that situation, let's talk about him. In terms of his skill line, I wouldn't necessarily say he's all that special. I mean, he certainly doesn't have the insane level of power or faction benefits that Karl Franz or Elspeth do have. Elspeth in terms of magical ability, Karl Franz in terms of faction benefits. You do get, things like Tempered Aura of Armor, Replenishment, Attrition benefits, all that, and Lore of Metal. Metal magic is pretty strong, probably the best school of magic the Empire has access to on its own. I would dare say like death magic works better with the gun line that the Empire has, but yeah, certainly you will not be regretting going with Gelt from a magical perspective. This guy, though, is not sold on the Lord effects. It's all about faction effects with Gelt that make him ridiculously powerful. Or rather, not so much the faction effects that are listed here, though Winds of Magic +5 for each wizard, lord, or hero in an army. Yeah, that's pretty strong. Hero crew rank for battle wizards, pretty good. But no, like, benefits here are from a faction perspective. So let's talk about those faction perspectives. Like Elspeth, you can get Electrocon State Troopers through research that takes 1 turn and costs 7,500. Now, the side benefit in all of this is that the way you gain students, which increase your research rate, is when you complete a research, doesn't matter how long it takes, when you complete research, you can then... you then have on the following turn a chance to get the student. Now they've lowered the chance, but because you have so much stuff with the state troopers that you can do instantly that you would want to do for the early game power the state troopers give you, you can get quite a few students. You might say, well, Elspeth can do the same thing. Yes, she can, but she doesn't have Cataclysm spells, whereas Gelt does. So you get extra army ability uses of Cataclysm spells, you get more Arcane Essays, which is his unique faction resource, like Karl Franz has Prestige, Elspeth has Schematics, and you have Arcane Essays, which are gained when you fight a battle with mages in your army. That's how you gain Arcane Essays, and you can gain a lot. What do you do with these Arcane Essays? Well, this is where it gets ridiculous. You get access to the Golden Order from the beginning because Gelt is a Wizard of Mel. So yeah, you get the Golden Order, the Golden Colleges from the beginning, and you can use this every 3 turns to print money. So you know those state troopers? Yeah, Gelt can get a lot more of them early on because he's printing close to half the money required every 3 turns. Effectively, when you're playing a Gelt campaign to begin with, you might as well just bump your economy by over 1,000. Because this is cheap. Like 150 Arcane Essays when I've got 3,000 in this campaign so far. Yeah, that's bloody cheap. For all the others, you do first need to unlock a wizard. So you just select a settlement where you want to unlock a wizard, and you instantly recruit a wizard. And this increases your mage capacity. So you can still recruit mages normally, to be sure, but the ability of global recruiting mages, and not just one mage, you know, we're not talking just one mage, no, we're talking multiple mages at a higher rank than anyone else, that is powerful. And here's another benefit. These guys start with movement range already. So when you recruit them, you can instantly put them in an army and fight a battle with them, which is something no one else can do, not quite to the same ridiculous level. So you don't even need the mage structure to recruit mages. There's no real benefit unless you want to get Luminarchs at tier 5. Outside of that, don't even bother. I mean, some Arcane Essays, some Winds of Magic in the local province, but yeah, really not worth building that structure when you get so many freaking mages to begin with. Okay, so he gets more mages than everyone else. No, he doesn't just get more mages than anyone else. He gets the best mages in the entire game. Because he, through the Colleges of Magic, he can do things like damage enemy units, destroy defensive supplies, and cause wall breaches. Yeah, you know how sieges suck? Gelt makes them less suckier. Instantly replenish action points of an entire army with a Celestial Wizard. Heal an entire army. Oh, you just fought the battle against Grimgor and lost 3/4 of your army? No problem. Jade Wizard is here to help you every turns. Big cooldown, but you will realistically only need this at that kind of level. Being able to instantly heal your entire freaking army is insanity. So like the middle action is a campaign action, the final action is a spell that is like extremely powerful. Like genuinely, so like Magma Storm. Look at this thing. It's got only 1 use, so you can increase it to 2, but geez, that's sanity. Oh, let's talk about Mass Concealment. Stock stance with 100% ambush success chance. This is absurd. You think Elspeth has powerful armies? Yeah, she does. When you're in the actual battle. Gelt makes his armies insanely powerful on the campaign. Because being able to ambush an enemy means that, one, they're gonna be in a they're gonna have a severe downside at the beginning of the battle. And the way they script it, by the way, they'll try and run away until they decide, if they decide to face you. They get major downsides, like in terms of morale, all that, at the beginning of the battle. And also, if you're attacking an enemy that might have two armies, like one right next to each other, like for instance, let's say, you know, these two war ally, let's say Inferiority or ally, then I wanted to attack this army under Xiao Ming, I could do so with that stock stance. And I could obliterate that and then move on to the next army. It is a significant power. Maybe not necessarily use it on an army next to a settlement because you kind of want the garrison to come out. But yeah, Elspeth might execute Vlad on the field of battle. Gelt will ambush Vlad and auto-resolve it. And even if it comes down to a manual battle, it won't matter. He won't win. That is absurd. That is a level of absurdity. Oh, when's magic is expensive, you might say. No problem. Let's reduce the cost. Let's reduce the cooldown. Yes, this is freaking absurd. And that's not all. Like, I'm not done. Like, I haven't listed any cons here so far, because if there's a con with Gelt, he doesn't have the same empire building capabilities as Karl Franz in terms of his settlement. He still has a difficult time with Confederation in his campaign. He doesn't have the same teleportation flexibility as Elspeth, so those are all downsides. He doesn't have the same level of armies as even Karl Franz. Like, Karl Franz can get better armies, you just get better magic. Out of the two of them, I know which one I'm picking. And even then, the pro with you versus Karl Franz, you get a huge level of magic power from the beginning. And once you get these mages immortal, there's no stopping it, basically. And mind you, your mages are disposable as well. Who gives a shit? Like, oh, I lost 10 mages in a battle. No problem. And instantly next turn, I'll make 10 more. Okay, not 10 more, but you get the idea, right? You could recruit, you could genuinely like, oh, someone's attacking your settlement? What's the issue? Let me recruit all of these mages, 8 of them at rank 5 with spells unlocked, better spells, and you can increase the recruit rank even further. Let them recruit all these mages, attach some cataclysm spells to a couple of them, use some faction-wide abilities. Like, Elspeth is powerful, but you still need an army with her. Gelt, I don't know how you would defeat him if his AI played properly, or if a player was playing. Like, if you're playing a versus campaign in multiplayer, I absolutely have no idea how you could win against them. Because even if you take the settlement, like, because every competent player, that's what they do, right? They would just recruit a lord when you're about to attack them, summon the mages, put a bunch of cataclysm spells, and even if you win, you're taking monumental casualties, and he'll do it again next turn. So even if if someone was invaded the Dragon Isle with a full damn stack, they'd be dead in 2 turns at most, and then I'd reclaim whatever settlements I lost. That is a major pro. So very strong playstyle in both offense and defense. The con is, yeah, you don't have the best units of the Empire. You have hard access to them. Probably the hardest access to troops with the exception of Volkmar. Like, even Marcus Wolfhard has better access to troops because Karl has all those electric counts. Like, yeah, you have all those electric count state troopers but that you can recruit once, but then you got to deal with the cooldown. So, yeah. Lots of early game power. That's the major pro in Gelt's campaign. The major con in his campaign is long-term. He doesn't have the same kind of level of campaign flexibility that the other campaigns do have, be it Karl's empire building capability or Elspeth's teleportation. But there's a lot more to say on this. You start in Cafe, and you have a series of events here that can see you stay in Cafe, either as an enemy or a friend of Cafe. But you can abuse it, because at the end of that event, you're technically supposed to give the territory to Xiao Ming, but you can sell the territory to a faction that you can then go declare war on, make tens of thousands of gold, and you get 25,000 when you return to the Empire. But you keep the territory that's next to Cafe. You may not keep every army, but no problem. Just do what I said. Recruit a lord, recruit mages, start spamming recruitment. What's insane about this benefit is you get 10 turns of population surplus, minus 100% upkeep, 50% construction time, regionalist attrition immunity, because like when you don't control any regions, you're supposed to take attrition, immunity for diplomatic penalties and empire factions. So you start the campaign. The most logical path, like if you're a new player, you just take this territory and then teleport back to the Empire, get monumental benefits, and then conquer Null. But you can go fight Gorst and Kugath, hell, even Greases, even Grimgor. So yeah, there's cons in terms of a long campaign, but early on, geez, this guy has potential. It's insane. It gets better. Climate-wise, you have the best climate of every Imperial campaign. In fact, you have better climate control over Cathay than Cathay itself. So maybe Cathay does need new management because, like, there's mountains in Cathay that Cathay doesn't do a great job controlling. There's jungles, a bit of jungle in Cathay that they don't do a great job controlling. You do not have that problem when you're playing a campaign as Gelt because you got mountain. So let me explain what mountain does. It means all the territory from here to here is yours for the taking. All the territory here is viable. All the territory in Lustria, by the way, Lustria sucks, don't go there. But you have so much territorial capability, it's insane. You don't have the same population surplus benefits, but you do have a lot of territorial viability, which counts for a lot in itself. Lots more flexibility in a campaign. You can stay in Cathay, you can go back to Empire. You can do one of those two, or you can pick the third option, which is stay near Cathay with territory, and then go back to Empire and play it at the same time. Incredible level of power over here in Gelt's campaign. The downsides, yeah, you just won't be able to build up territory and get access to high-end units as quickly as Elspeth or Karl Franz, and you will suffer in terms of like your economy and late game potential compared to Karl Franz, and yeah, your gunpowder units won't be as ridiculous as Elspeth's will be. But conclusion, which of these campaigns would I play? Well, I've listed the pros and cons. So if you're looking to build a massive world-spanning empire with lots of diplomatic possibilities, Karl Franz. If you're looking to play a campaign where you have a far more straightforward path and really powerful armies and something easily digestible, Elspeth, with late-game possibilities of teleportation and insane power and global unit recruitment. If you want to play a campaign that's incredibly strong throughout in terms of magical potential, ridiculous level of flexibility in terms of both offense and defense in your own territories, as well as being able to cheese the hell out of the game in the early game and have the best early game potential of the vast majority of factions in the game, Gelt. Like, I'm not joking, Gelt may genuinely have one of the best early game situations of any campaign in the game. His early enemy, the nomads, are no chance and don't stand a chance against him. To the point that you just flat out ignore them after turn 2 and go conquer Gorst. It was no easy feat, but it's like guns and hellstorms do a good job. So huge level of power, and having a lot of early game power is incredibly beneficial. You might suffer in the late game, but if you're looking for a shorter campaign, Gelt is really the one to go for. Personally, if I was a brand new player and picking up a campaign, I would start with Gelt. Even if you're not willing to cheese to the level that I've done here, you can just play a normal campaign in Cathay. There's no downsides. Cathay is a great region of the campaign. Like, that's got to be said. Cathay, out of the areas of the entire game, is great for someone to learn the game, to experiment, because you fight Skaven, you fight Lizardmen, you have Wood Elves, you have Chaos, you have Dark Elves, so you have a lot of different factions. You have Vampires and Nurgle and Ogres, like so many enemies to encounter, so much variety over there. So yeah, really, really good campaign for a beginner player. Elspeth might be easier to digest in terms of her armies, but yeah, Gelt in terms of the campaign situation, like there's a lot of things he has on offer. And that's what I would say. Personally, yeah, I would go with Gelt. But there's strong arguments in favor and against all of these characters. And my conclusion, regardless of who you choose to play, Creative Assembly did an amazing job with this one. Let's hope they'll continue to do so. Costin signing out.